What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, with ScoopDuck on 3, coming to you live on a Friday morning. It is September 20th, 2024. Hope everybody's having an awesome week, having an awesome day. Happy Friday, and welcome to another edition of the Oregon Recruiting Hour, where we break down the latest headlines, intel, developments around Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks on the recruiting trail. And joining me to break it all down is ScoopDuck owner and publisher Justin Hopkins. How we doing, J-Hop?
Pretty good. It's Friday, which is always a good thing. And it's I think it's going to be 81 or 82 degrees here today for the high. So, I mean, I'm kind of thinking I'd like to go golf today. And so that's pretty good golfing weather and really good drinking weather.
There you go. Yeah, it's been pretty low key here in Long Beach temperature wise. We had that crazy heat wave where we were like 95 plus for like 3 or 4 days. So maybe not quite what you are getting out there in Medford, but we're both embracing the cooler temperatures, it sounds like. Are you a fall guy? What's your favorite season? What do you think?
Shoot. I mean, I like to take the boat out, so I like summer. I really like spring. I think spring is my season because you coming right out of the cold and the rain, and you start getting some of those days that are like today where they're upper 70s, low 80s, somewhere in there, no humidity, just great days to be outside.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think spring in Eugene was pretty beautiful when I was living out in Oregon. So I can definitely see how it's easy to make a case for spring as an ideal season. I'd say that I'm more of a fall guy. I love the misty mornings, the cool mornings, all of that stuff. So it's almost here. I think we get a little heat next week, and then it's gonna calm down a bit for us. But yeah, we got some people here showing up in the chat. We got Eric, who's always here. My guy Steven is here as well. He said, "Oh God, I was just in Medford, humid man," or felt like it.
We did have a couple of days that were humid, which is not the norm. It's usually not humid. It gets hot, but not humid. But and I saw Chan just posted a minute ago about getting in a cardio session. I was actually thinking about going for a jog this morning too. So maybe that's my sign to make sure I go. I didn't jog yesterday, so I probably better do it today.
Yeah, it's always nice to get a little bit of a workout in before the weekend, so you can kind of feel good about relaxing a little bit. But what do you say? Let's talk about some recruiting, Justin, because we finally have some developments, it feels like, for the first time in a while. And let's start in the 2025 class, talking with one of Oregon's newest offers in the 2025 class out in the Lone Star State in the Houston area. Oregon extended an offer to 2025 Baylor linebacker commit Caleb Burns on Thursday, and I was actually able to get an interview with Burns. So we'd love it when the pieces kind of fall into place, the timing works out, and you're able to kind of jump on that news. But this is an interesting one, Justin, because Oregon, as we know, hasn't had the most success with the linebacker position so far in the 2025 class, missing out on a couple of really talented prospects, but they're gonna keep going. So what did you make of this offer?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great offer. This is a guy that recently in the recent On3 rankings got a massive bump just inside the top 150 overall players. So as you could see, his senior season's paying dividends. Baylor obviously, got his commitment at the end of July. So good for them. But I think that means that there's a window there for Oregon. Just at the moment, obviously hasn't visited, the offer's new. I'm sure the relationship's getting built, but kind of the early word there is there's definitely a positive vibe around this recruitment from the Oregon side, just meaning, hey, there's definitely a chance here, kind of see what develops, see what kind of interest this young man has and the rest of the pieces that come together. So like the offer. And once again, here we are talking about another kid from the state of Texas, which we know Oregon is knocking on the door, trying to really just pillage that Texas talent as much as they can.
And you would certainly expect Oregon to stay active in Texas with all the ties they have on the staff. And I think they're only going to get ramped up with Rashad Samples being on the staff. He actually posted on X earlier this morning that he is out in the Dallas area. So there you go with the Ducks in a bye week. They call it a work week. They're hitting the road all over the country to see some top prospects. And I was able to talk with Burns, like I mentioned, following this offer. And I think I can definitely echo some of your sentiment there, Justin, as far as Oregon feels like they have a bit of a shot here. He mentioned that this was one of his bigger offers. So that was pretty crazy, I think, is what the quote was when I spoke with him. And of course, if you guys are listening to us or watching us, you can read the full interview that I wrote up with Burns over on ScoopDuck.com. It is a premium story for our subscribers, but you guys got to check us out. So this is the right time to do it. And I think that there's already a little bit of positive momentum here, Justin, for Oregon and Caleb Burns, as it sounds like he is looking at that Ohio State game on October 12th to get out for a possible visit. And he was just recently at Baylor for their win over Air Force. It was a blowout win, so he was liking what he saw from the Baylor defense. But it seems like this is a guy that Oregon probably feels like they have a good shot with in the end, because Baylor is just not really doing all that great. I think they've probably fallen short of expectations under Dave Aranda, but it is still early in the year. But I don't think most people think of Baylor as a recruiting power that Oregon won't be able to kind of go head to head with.
Yeah, I mean, Baylor's had some wins on the recruiting trail in years past. I mean, it's a great school. It's obviously it's a great university, but I think your point is right that the Dave Aranda, I don't want to call it experiment because that's not fair, but I mean, the Dave Aranda experiment hasn't gone as Baylor fans would have liked so far. So it's, I'm not saying he's a guy that will be fired, but there's certainly some talk and some, maybe a little bit of heat on his seat already. Last year didn't go well, and this year's obviously just kind of hasn't gotten there yet. So maybe that's a factor. Maybe that's a factor in this recruitment. Maybe that helps Oregon a little bit. I know we're going to talk about other prospects and probably linebacker targets as well, but whether Oregon can get any of those other guys or flip anybody or anything like that, this looks like a guy that I think, Oregon fans have to keep on their radar for a while.
And Burns is going to be one to watch moving forward, especially with Oregon on the road in Texas recruiting right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to kind of stack some of that momentum with, hey, we just offered you. Now we're going to come out and see you when we could have gone anywhere in the country, that kind of a deal. I think that maybe that's some of the strategic elements that we see with recruiting, Justin. So Caleb Burns, a big one to watch out of the Houston area. I think someone on the boards was talking about how this was kind of near where Terrence Green and Ashton Porter came out for their high school ball. So Oregon's tapping into some familiar roots out there in the state of Texas. And it looks like if you're Oregon, that this is about all you could ask for in terms of him getting out to campus for a visit potentially on October 12th. So we'll keep an eye on that one and make sure to keep you guys updated. Maybe I'll get an interview with Burns before and after that visit. Got a live comment here from DG Flame who says, thanks for all you do, fellas. Love the content. Stoked for a stress-free weekend. And then asks, go Wolverines, with USC, of course, playing Michigan this weekend.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it is nice when there's not an Oregon game because you can kind of just sit back and, I think we'll talk about it in a little bit here, but look at some of these other college games and be like, hey man, I could sit on the couch and watch that whole game or whatever. I love college football, and I mean it starts tonight. It starts Friday night with a pretty big game later tonight. And as DG Flame says, there's no stress. There's no stress whether Oregon wins or loses or plays badly or they play well. And then on our end, there's no stress of like the message board melting down or anything like that. So, I'm looking forward to it too. And yes, go Wolverines.
I can definitely see why an Oregon fan would want the Wolverines in this one. I do kind of tend to find myself favoring USC in this matchup, Justin. I don't know if we're getting too early into the football talk for what our plans were this episode, but I do feel like there's at least a little bit more certainty or stability around the quarterback position for the Trojans. And Miller Moss has been great to start the year. But over there in Ann Arbor, I think they named Alex Orji the starting quarterback for this weekend's matchup against the Trojans. And we all know he's pretty limited as a passer.
Yeah. I say go Wolverines, but I think USC wins. And I think last I saw the spread was like 2.5 or 3.5 points, somewhere around there. And Wolverines just aren't a very good football team. I mean, it's unfortunate because they lost so much talent, but they really aren't that good of it. They have a few really good players on the team, but they don't have a good team top to bottom. So, I think Michigan can do enough to play them maybe tough. But the problem there, just like it was with Oregon and Oregon State, if Michigan cannot keep the score close and it starts to get away, they are not built to make up that gap offensively, just like the Beavers were not built to make up that gap with Oregon. So if this thing gets away from them at all, it's going to be a boat race.
I could see this being a game where Michigan definitely leans on their defense. We know how talented they are at the point of attack with guys like Mason Graham along that defensive line. Another big development in this game, Justin, is whether or not tight end Colston Loveland is going to be able to give it a go. I think he left last week's game with an injury, so we'll keep our eye on that USC Michigan game this weekend. Definitely got a lot of interesting matchups this weekend to keep our eye on. Eric says, go blue. I hate USC, and I think it helps Oregon recruiting when they lose.
Yeah, you're not wrong at all. You're not wrong. It certainly helps Oregon. And I mean, here we are. We gotta be real though. We gotta have a real conversation. Lincoln Riley has done a good job, has turned around that defense with all the new hires, and they have some momentum recruiting right now. So I mean, have they caught Oregon? No, I'm not saying that, but they've definitely closed the gap a little bit. And if you're Lincoln Riley, that's why you're paid $7 or $8 million or whatever he's getting per year to do. And so, I mean, we got to call a spade there. But yeah, it's still go Wolverines for sure.
Yeah, USC has some momentum on the trail, picking up a commitment from 5-star wide receiver Jerome Miles earlier this week out of the state of Utah, Corner Canyon High School. So great pickup for them. Got a question here from our guy Andrew, and then we'll get to our next recruit of discussion for today's show. Andrew, thanks for the question. He asks, do you have any idea why Jordan Davidson has dropped so far down some recruiting ranking sites? Between him and Nasir Wyatt, they sure are down on modern day Ducks. The good old rankings discussion, Justin. It never ceases to generate some conversation, and someone's going to be happy with it. Someone's going to be upset about it. Just to give my personal take on this, I think more so with Davison. I know that there's been a lot said about him and kind of where he is at physically with some of his weight. I think he is a little bit on the heavier side right now. I know that he's working on trying to drop some weight right now. He doesn't necessarily look as explosive as he did when I first saw him back in 2022. And he seemed like he was going down on first contact when I last saw him, a little bit more than I was maybe expecting. But I think this is still a guy that is really, really talented. And I think there's a lot of potential, a lot of upside for him at the next level. But we'll have to see. I think with Nasir Wyatt, it's maybe just a bit of a question around where he ultimately projects. And maybe that's part of the reason they're having an issue with his rankings. But that is a twitchy, explosive, really, really talented guy. So I think he's a problem in high school for sure for a lot of these offensive linemen that just aren't quick enough. But if you get one of those big athletic linemen that can get his hands on him, then I could see that potentially being a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I don't really have much more to add with Davidson. People are looking to get his explosion back to, like you said, a couple years ago. Hasn't quite been the same, whether it's weight, whether whatever it is. It hasn't been the same. But if you're Oregon, it's 100% worth the risk, right? There is a really good running back there. Obviously, he's at modern day, so that helps as well. And at the end of the day, he's still a 4-star. So this is a guy that, yeah, maybe he's not pushing for 5-star status anymore, but we're still talking about a 4-star recruit. And Wyatt, it just boils down to him being a tweener. He's a tweener, and that's a hard projection to make, right? Can he get, big enough to, be an edge guy, or is he too big to be a linebacker? But you can't mistake the production and the twitchiness that he has. And I think if you're Dan Lanning, it's 100% worth taking him and putting him on the defense and just kind of see what happens and see where he fits in. So, yeah, I mean, those are probably the reasons you're going to get. And, I mean, it is what it is. Recruiting rankings aren't an exact science. I mean, look at how many quarterbacks are missed. Like, I mean, they've got all these guys that are 5 stars that don't pan out. And then you've got Mahomes and these other guys that are ranked as 3 stars, and here they are, the best in the NFL. So I appreciate recruiting rankings. It's an impossible science, but I also don't let it be like this massive, like, oh, he's only a 4-star, we shouldn't take him. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's not an end all be all by any means. And I think it's like you got to get these guys onto campus and then see how they stack up. Or if they don't stack up, then get them in the weight room, get them in the playbook, and I like to say marinate them a little bit and get them comfortable up to speed with the college game. So appreciate the question, Andrew. It's definitely a good question, and we always appreciate the questions here on the Ducks Dish podcast. Glad to have you guys along. Max Torres and Justin Hopkins here with another edition of the Oregon Recruiting Hour on a Friday morning. If you guys are here in the live chat, do us a favor. Take a second, like the video, and subscribe to the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel. We're always trying to grow our Oregon football community here on YouTube. And maybe you take a step further, hit that notification bell so you never miss out when Justin or I go live and talk about the Ducks. So let's move it right along here, Justin, and let's talk about a prospect in the state of Oregon that is generating some buzz here lately. In the 2025 class, Oregon sent out a new offer this week to 2025 Portland, Oregon Central Catholic offensive lineman Zach Staskowski, who is verbally committed to Washington. But now the Ducks are entering the mix here, which is an interesting development because offensive line, much like linebacker, has been a position that has had some very significant ebbs and flows for Alik Terry here in the 2025 recruiting cycle. The Ducks have a couple of commits already in the fold, but they want some more, and now they're looking in state to find another option.
Yeah, I mean, offensive line is a position that we've talked at length about. Members on ScoopDuck have talked at great lengths about, and obviously a little bit of a lack of depth right now on the team. They do have a few guys committed as offensive linemen in this class. Zaire Addison being the headliner so far. Really good looking prospect, but they need more. Let's be real. They need more. They need more guys. You have to get prep offensive linemen. You can't just supplement with, transfer portal offensive linemen all across the board, right? It's just there's too much, you lose too much chemistry by doing that. It just takes too long. Maybe supplementing a tackle here and there, or if you got to get an interior guy or whatever, you can sustain that. But, I think Oregon obviously is going to have a great shot here. This kid's just up the road at Central Catholic. They've recruited Central Catholic obviously well in the past. You go and take one from the Huskies. It's like a double win potentially if Oregon can get him to flip his commitment. One big thing that stands out to me. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat. Guys that get later offers, typically they're a fallback option when that happens. I think Oregon's had some misses at offensive line, but to his credit, he just picked up a Georgia offer as well, just before the Oregon one, I think the day before, earlier in the day, either way. So that, to me, at least lends a little bit of like, okay, this is more than just a fallback offer. This is more of like, hey, this is a guy that's having a pretty good senior year and probably needs to be playing at a D1 level. And it's not like you're trying to steal him from Boise State or Idaho State or whatever. This is a kid committed to Washington. That's a big time, Big Ten program. So a lot to like about this. And, certainly being a state of Oregon kid, no matter what, Oregon's going to be in the mix here.
And I remember somebody had asked us on either a mailbag episode of the pod, or maybe it was a live stream question. Someone was asking us, hey, are there any senior risers that we need to kind of keep an eye on and that Oregon is getting involved with? And maybe that's the case here with Staskowski, who has had a strong start to the year. That this is, I believe, what we're looking at on the YouTube channel, his junior film. But I want to go back to one of the things you said, Justin, about how he just recently picked up a Georgia offer. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on here. But what do you make of that this dynamic that, I don't know if it's a quiet part that we're saying out loud, but you and I both know some schools, and I guess maybe in this instance, potentially like Oregon, some schools across college football wait until some of these other schools get into the mix with these prospects before they extend an offer. And on the surface, it looks a little strange, especially with a guy like Staskowski, because he's in the state of Oregon. But what do you make of just that dynamic and how some schools like to operate that way and hold off on making that offer?
I mean, there's a strategy to it. I mean, I understand. I do think that, if we rewind this back to, let's say, April, May, June, somewhere in there, if we're going to rewind this and take a look at that, this is probably a guy that if Oregon offers, he's taking a visit and committing, right? And they know that, right? They know that. That's why they probably felt very confident making this offer now, knowing that, yeah, maybe it's a little bit later in the process, but hey, this is a kid that's from the state of Oregon, really wants to come play here. And all that's great. So, I mean, you kind of have to weigh both things. In this particular instance here, Oregon went big game hunting at offensive line. I mean, we know all the names that they went after in the spring. And quite frankly, other than Zier Addison, they missed on them, right? I mean, yeah, they got Dimitri Manning and stuff like that. But, I mean, they missed on these other guys that ended up going to other schools. So, yeah, you circle back here knowing that this kid is in your backyard and has probably more than genuine interest. And, it's a pretty safe offer to make for Oregon. I mean, for me, like, I love when Oregon gets to the state of Oregon kids. Now, I'm not a go offer every kid in Oregon. You got to get them. You can't do that. You're not going to build a winning program doing that. We both know that. Fans should know that by now. But I love it when these kids turn out because, in my 15-ish years of doing this, those Oregon kids show up and it just means more to them. Like those are the guys in the locker room that, hold things together or, they're in practice and they play with that passion or they practice with that passion and it bleeds over to the rest of the guys. So, you just look at what Bryce Betcher's doing right now, and that's a case in point. You look at Brady Breeze and what he did when he was at Oregon. You look at Chase Cota when he came over for the 1 year that he played at Oregon. Curtis White, list goes on. There's Alex Balducci. I mean, I just love when these Oregon guys show up and just kind of play with that little bit of extra fire, a little bit of extra pride. So I do understand Oregon has to recruit nationally, but, guys like this still have a soft spot in my heart for sure.
And it's easy to see why. I think it's always fun when you see, particularly with this dynamic, how Oregon doesn't usually churn out a bunch of really top-notch high school recruits, but those guys that do, and then as a result, Oregon has to recruit nationally. A lot of times here in Southern California, that's a big part of why I moved here. You guys know the story. But it is fun when you get to see a Ryan Walk and Alex Forsyth making moves like that. And Bryce Betcher is the latest one. So I think that's a really cool angle with Oregon's team that we get to see year after year. And after talking to Staskowski, I do believe that Oregon has a very healthy chance of pulling this one off. I don't think anything is imminent right now, but he did talk about how the timing of the offer was a little bit later. But he also, oddly enough, was offered on the later side by Washington. And he said that doesn't really factor into how much interest he's going to have in a school. He got on the phone with Alik Terry, talked for about 30 minutes just about ball, about him. And he's been to Oregon so many times. So there's definitely a familiarity there. I think he said his grandfather and his mom and his sister went to Oregon. So you look at those family ties. That obviously has to factor into the equation here. And make you feel like Oregon has a better shot here with this recruitment, even though they just hopped in the fold. But right now, it looks like it's about 3 schools to keep an eye on for Staskowski. You got Oregon, Washington, and Georgia. And it sounds like those are the 3 that he's going to be mainly focused on moving forward here. He's only taken 1 official visit so far, and that's out to Minnesota. But he did kind of allude to the fact that he's going to try to take official visits to each of those 3 schools, Oregon, Washington, and Georgia, moving forward. But didn't really want to. Oh, go for it.
I was just saying, I'd be fairly shocked if he's a serious target for Georgia, right? That feels more like, and he could take the visit. I'm not saying he's not worthy. That feels kind of like a blanket offer for them. Make sure if this kid, turns out to be super elite, that we've got an offer there. And I think one thing is he was committed to Minnesota. Washington offered. He flipped to Washington. I think this is a kid that wants to stay in the Pacific Northwest at the end of the day. I mean, his actions seem to indicate that from the past. So I think, to your point, I think Oregon, Washington are probably set up for a pretty big battle here.
It definitely makes sense, right? He was committed to Minnesota for, I actually don't know how long he was committed to Minnesota, but I saw that he had decommitted from Minnesota and then kind of let it breathe for about a week before he ended up committing to Jedfish and the Huskies. And he's been up there a number of times. But it does make sense, Justin, like you said, that it looks like Oregon's going to be battling with the Huskies for another recruit here in the trenches. And there was a comment from Andrew about how Vander Plug is also in the mix. So just going to bring that one back up here. Would not be surprised at all if Vander Plug ended up on Oregon's campus sooner rather than later. I don't know if I'd say the Michigan State game, but if Oregon is looking to get any recruit on campus, it seems like that pitch for the Ohio State game is going to be pretty easy because everybody wants to take it to that game. So if you can go as a recruit and get to take that one in, I think you're going to take that opportunity.
Well, and to Andrew's post there, I think Oregon already started with Plug, right? They offered him a few weeks ago, and we started having that dialogue already about, Oregon looking to poach, Plug from Washington. So why not both? Maybe take them both, figure it out. They're both positions in need. I mean, if we're talking, so far you and I have talked about linebacker, offensive lineman, and Plug being a tight end. Those are the three positions right now they need the most. So Oregon needs to find some guys there. It looks like they're definitely actively doing that.
Por qué no los dos is the question we were asking ourselves with Vander Plug, with Zach Staskowski. Make sure you guys tune in to ScoopDuck.com because I'll have that full interview up later today with Zach Staskowski so you can see the quotes and everything that he had to say regarding his latest offer from Oregon. Justin, let's talk about one more guy here while we're here on the show, and he's another newer offer in the 2025 recruiting class, and that is Clovis, North California linebacker McKay Madson, about 6'2", 230 pounds. He got his offer from the Ducks following a visit for Saturday Night Live. I got to interview him, and that's another interview you can read with the full quotes over on ScoopDuck.com. And a big part of this recruitment for Madson was the fact that he got to come out to Oregon and then perform in front of Coach Brian Michalowski, B-Mike as he is known by. Got to get coached by him as well, which was something he said was very important to him and kind of made that a unique visit. But the reason that he is really kind of shooting up Oregon's board right now is that he plans to come out for the Ohio State game. And I think he said that he was going to maybe come out again for the Washington-Oregon game, if memory serves here. But this is a guy that is also planning to take an official to Oregon in December. But I think the Ducks are playing the long game here. I think the last thing I'll add before I toss it to you, Justin, one of my buddies on the football scene out here in Southern California has gotten to see Madson, and I asked him if he knew about this guy, and he said that's like asking if I have 2 feet. Kid is an absolute freakazoid, and you can see the tape here that he is also a really, really good running back. So I think that just adds to his upside. He's number 1 nationally in discus, so he's a track and field guy as well. And I feel a little, stupid that I'm just learning about this guy now, but hey, better late than never.
Yeah, it's very much a slightly smaller version of Braden Platt, right? Just a guy that's an elite athlete in multiple sports, can do multiple things, just has one of those, body types that allows him to be, just kind of everywhere. And that's the linebackers that Dan Lanning has said that he wants, right? That's what we see him recruiting. Very active, very speedy linebackers that can get out in space and not get abused. We just don't see Oregon recruiting the 6'2", 245, Dick Butkus looking guys that just, destroy you in the middle. And quite frankly, you really can't do that in this defense. Taking a mission here. So this one's a little bit more peculiar of a recruitment than others, right? So he's going to be gone for a couple of years. So, it's a safe offer to make. It's a safe commitment to take because basically the two of you, when this is all said and done, no matter what you sign, have 2 years to kind of figure things out, right? He's got 2 years to go do his mission. Oregon's got 2 years to figure out their roster and space. Not that they would not take him. And one reason that, maybe Madson is not on a bigger spotlight, I guess you could say, on a bigger recruiting spotlight. He's in Fresno. He's in Clovis, right? There's not a lot going on there, so it's a different area. If this guy was down in LA, in Los Angeles, I think the spotlight might be a little bit different for him. But again, credit Oregon for bringing him in for Saturday Night Live and having the chance to see him work out in person. And then, of course, they made that offer following what they saw on the field then. So this isn't a new offer. It's just somebody that maybe they've turned the heat back up on a little bit because of seeing him there and then matching him up with some of his senior film already.
And this guy's film is super fun to watch. Just all the versatility on full display. And it's been interesting, Justin, too, at least in the last 2 cycles, 24 and now 25. I wouldn't say it's been a priority by any means, but it's been kind of interesting to see Oregon take a little bit more of a look at some of these guys that are taking mission trips, right? With Gatlin Bear being the 5-star wide receiver from the 2024 class that is now on his mission before he ultimately arrives at Oregon. I think that's something to look at. And that it's going to surprise nobody here that BYU is a major contender in this recruitment as well. He went out there for a visit in August. He's got a bunch of family members that went to BYU. And obviously with him being of that faith background, the Mormon background, Church of Latter-day Saints, it's something that's going to, I think, play a role here. But he did speak about how he really likes the long-term commitment from Dan Lanning with his contract. He's going to be around there. They're going to honor him going on his mission trip, and that's just strengthening the appeal. So I think that this is going to be a fun one to watch unfold, and McKay Madson, absolutely a name that Oregon fans got to know.
Yeah, one to know, and I do like that, while some might allow it, Oregon and Dan Lanning are not allowing these missions to kind of like push them away from some of these guys, right? I mean, obviously Gatlin Bear is truly an elite wide receiver, and I know Oregon wanted him. Didn't let the mission, interrupt anything, and I don't think they will with Madsen either. It's like, hey, either we want him or we don't. We'll figure out the mission stuff and come up with a good plan that gets him, back at Oregon when he's ready, and we'll recruit, around him kind of moving forward. So yeah, this is a kid that I really like his film, and I'd like to see a little bit more of him from this season because he moves around really well, and it's some pretty incredible. Both the linebackers are as well.
No doubt. Well, that's another big one that you got to know if you're an Oregon fan. And something else you got to know about, how about Cheeto Grill in Springfield? Almost forgot to get that one in there, Justin, but not sure what your guys' dinner plans are, but head on over to Cheeto Grill in Springfield, 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. Try out their homemade tortillas. They got great food, a great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy, Ruben, and let him know that Max Torres sent you. Perfect time to get over to Ranchito, seeing that it's Friday and the weekend is getting underway. But Justin, any final thoughts here as we wrap up another awesome edition of the Oregon Recruiting Hour?
No, I know we touched on it. I figured we'd dibble back into it just for a couple minutes, but I mean, there's some really good football games this weekend that we all have an opportunity to watch. I don't know about you. I'll throw a couple out. The action starts tonight, Illinois at Nebraska. I think that's going to be a really good football game. Friday night game. Obviously, everybody will be watching it because it's not the only game on, but it's the biggest game by far. So, a couple other games that I think fans might want to tune in. UCLA at LSU. We're going to get an idea for what UCLA is or isn't. LSU should win that by 30, but I guess we'll see. And then Cal at FSU. Low key, it's a touchy subject, but let's just call a spade a spade. The Cal Twitter game in the last week has been unbelievable. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, if it upsets you, I mean, I apologize, but I'm just telling you, this is like college football is all about pageantry. I don't know if you guys saw, there was a TCU did a video basically making fun of their opponent for being on the CW. That kind of crap I love. That's college football. Like, we're making fun of each other. We're not taking it too seriously. So anyways, yeah, Cal Twitter is absolutely on fire this week. And, last big one for me, I guess, is seeing Tennessee at Oklahoma. That should be the game of the week, but who knows? We'll see.
I'm rooting for Tennessee just off of the fact that Nico Iamaleava is from Long Beach and has been absolutely tearing it up. His younger brother, Madden, Iamaliava, who is verbally committed to UCLA here in the 2025 class, recently transferred to Long Beach Poly. So I'm going to have to get out there and get an interview with him. Other games that kind of stick out to me, we got Arkansas at Auburn. Deuce Knight is going to be making another return visit out to Auburn. The Notre Dame quarterback commit seems like a matter of when, not if, he flips to the Tigers. I have my prediction on Auburn to pull off that flip. How about, what was that other one I was looking at? How about Georgia Tech at Louisville? I think that's another one. Georgia Tech, I think, is still trying to ride some of that momentum from the season opening win over Florida State. Will they be able to keep it up? And here's another one, too. Utah at Oklahoma State, number 12 at number 14. I know Cam Rising's been battling a little bit of injury this season, so that's definitely a bummer for him. I think he might be able to go in that one. I don't know if you've heard. No, he's not.
Yeah, he's playing.
Oh, he is. Okay.
Yeah, because the joke is the two quarterbacks in that game, the combined age of them is like 49 or 50 or something. Like, it's crazy. It's a crazy statistic.
It is. Yeah, so pretty sneaky good slate for week 4 of the college football season, as Dan Lanning and the Ducks are in a bye. They will not play until next week when they come down to my neck of the woods in Southern California to face the UCLA Bruins. Plan is for me to be on scene in the Rose Bowl to cover that game for you guys over at ScoopDuck on 3. But Justin, any final thoughts before we wrap up the show? Thanks for catching me on the other games that we're watching because I spaced out there.
No, that's fine. We don't always talk about it, so it was a kind of but no. Thank you guys for subscribing. Thank you guys. I'm not gonna lie. Thank you guys more so for subscribing to ScoopDuck. That really, I'm gonna be honest. If you guys like this content, Max and I don't really make any money off YouTube. Like, we really don't. I'm not a couple $100, right? Not enough for either one of us to live on. If you appreciate our work and what allows us to do this every day or most days, subscribe to ScoopDuck, because that pays our bills, and that gives us the time to do these things on top of what we provide on ScoopDuck. So if you appreciate this content, and I feel like I'm preaching, please, go to subscribe to ScoopDuck, monthly, annual, doesn't matter. That allows us to not have to go work at Starbucks and then moonlight doing this. So,
but I will be going to Starbucks to get a pumpkin cream cold brew on my way to Mission Viejo versus Basha tonight for my Friday Night Lights high school game this weekend. But no, for real, come see us at ScoopDuck, you guys, to get the very best in Oregon football and recruiting. It feels like after they weren't even in a dead period, Justin, but it kind of feels like we might as well have been, because it has been crickets on the recruiting trail. But now it feels like it's picking up again. So that's why I love covering the Ducks and covering the Ducks on the recruiting trail. So come and see us at scoopduck.com. Come try us out. Eric says it best here. Por que no los dos? Subscribe to us here on YouTube and subscribe to us over at scoopduck.com. But if you want to find more of that guy, Justin Hopkins, you can follow him on Twitter at jhopkinssd. You can find me on any social media platform at mtorresports. Been trying to ramp up the Instagram game a little bit lately, so come see the awesome photos that I'm posting from Eric Becker over there. He's our ScoopDuck photographer. But until next time, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish Podcast.